Hi, everybody. We are super excited. We have Katie Novak here today. She is a UDL expert. She is a best-selling author, and she is an educational powerhouse. So thank you so much, Katie, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super happy to be here.
So when we've done this in the past, we kind of started out by just saying, I don't know if you have a drink nearby, but it kind of tells you a little bit. It doesn't matter if you don't worry. It kind of tells you about where you are. I'm drinking a cup of tea at 6 o'clock in the morning from El Salvador. Where are you coming from today?
I am right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I need a coffee immediately. So, like, I roll out of bed, my husband kind of hears me puttering around upstairs, and then I can hear him turn on the coffee machine. Like, get this woman caffeine before her day starts. So my coffee in New England, in the United States, has already been polished off. 8 in the morning here, and that coffee was gone at 6.
Yeah.
I got a wine glass that was given to me today to say I would look fancier today because it's make your teacher feel appreciated day. So I'm drinking water out of the wine glass today.
As long as you don't have to use it during the daytime at school, I think that's fine. So, Katie, we wanted to kind of dive in and pick your brain about all things UDL.
Yep.
And one of the things that we've been talking about is kind of, as teachers in lots of different schools, what are some of like the most common barriers that you feel teachers face and have to work with?
So I think a lot of the times when we're talking about barriers, like the most basic barriers are just accessibility in general. And when we're talking about barriers, I generally say like there's 2 big buckets of the type of barriers that we can experience. The first is your accessibility barriers. And I'll give a couple of examples and then you all can share some things that you've seen that have been really helpful to eliminate that. And then you have your engagement barriers. So once truly everyone has access and entry points, then we have to make it relevant and authentic and innovative. But accessibility is really like the lowest bar. And so the example that I like to use all the time is, imagine for a moment that I have a party and I invite all of you, and the only thing I serve is like steak and red wine. And that's the only way.
Delicious.
Yeah. And the thing is it will work for a lot of people. And so you basically, you say, okay, like this is great. The steak is going to be cooked perfectly. This is like vintage red. And the problem is that is not accessible to everyone, because we know that there's many people who do not drink alcohol and there's many people who have a plant-based diet. And so the first thing we have to think about is accessibility, and that's not accessible to everyone. But there are people who do drink alcohol and do eat meat, and they're like, no, I don't want that. It's just not worth it to me. And so we have something similar that's happening in the classroom, where if I hand out a printed text, a worksheet, a workbook, a novel, an assignment that is just on paper, something like this, I know that there's going to be students who cannot access the information in that way. And it could be because they're not able to decode at that grade level. It could be that they're struggling with some visual processing or impairment. If I don't have my contact lenses in, I would not be able to read a printed text. It could be that they are multilingual and they're not able to access it in English. It could be that they don't have any background knowledge. So even though they can decode it, they really don't have any schema activated. And so those are your very, very low level accessibility barriers. And so if I was going to have you over, I would say something like, I'm going to have the grill on, and I'm going to make sure that I have some grilled veggies and I have some steak, but also you're welcome to bring something to grill, because the real goal here is that you have something that you can enjoy. And I'll have some wine, but I'll also have some water and some coffee and some tea, and you're welcome to bring something on your own. The way that that looks in the classroom is, if I have something that students need to learn from printed text, my first question is, what is the purpose? Is it truly the quality of the text, or is it building understanding? Because if it's building understanding, I might say, well, I want you all to know a little bit essentially about the how water moves through the atmosphere. And if we're not actually talking about like author's craft and how well the text is written, students can learn that from a video. They can learn that by exploring different resources and technology. They could learn that if the text was potentially digital. And then my other question is, but what is the point? What is it that they have to know? What is it they have to be able to do? And is there another way to do that? And if I can then say, I've made it accessible, then how do I make it interesting? How do I make it engaging? And so, students who are very into, simulations, maybe they find this amazing simulation online. And I want to say to students, like, this is what I have available, but you're also welcome to find your own resources, the equivalent of feel free to bring your own drink to my party. And the other thing is just, if we truly are talking about the quality of the text, the author's craft, it is a profound text and every student needs access to it, then I'm going to have to activate their background knowledge. I'm going to have to provide lots of visuals and maybe pre-teach vocabulary. And then I'm going to have to allow them to maybe read it first in their first language, to listen to it, to enlarge that text. It's just that the printed text doesn't work, just like the steak doesn't work. So I would love to hear all your thoughts just about those analogies and how the biggest barriers, I think, are accessibility. But just because you make something accessible doesn't mean that you're going to get that buy-in, that engagement, that value.
Yeah. It's so interesting when you were talking, I was thinking a few students I worked with, they did in grade 5, they did a big research project and they were all told like they needed to use their iPads and they had all those text like printed resources online they needed to read. And I was working with this one student who reads at a grade 2 level, so he can't really read. He normally uses a C-pen, but his teacher told him like, here are the resources I want you to read, and he couldn't get anything done. And I was telling him like, hey, like, what is your topic really about? And it's like, how do you like to learn? And he's like, I like to watch YouTube videos or like videos where somebody talks about it. And then we watched videos. And then after the video was done, we would pause it while we're watching. And I asked him like, what did you understand? And then he just recorded what he understood. And after, we sat together for like 40 minutes and he had all of his research done. And all he did was listening to videos. And I was thinking, such an easy way, like he had the same outcome, but just like he didn't have any frustrations. He felt so, his whole face went from like, I just don't understand, I can't read it, to like, he felt so good about those 40 minutes. And I wonder if that's what you meant when you talk about accessibility.
I think what's interesting, if I was kind of a new-ish teacher, Katie, I would feel super overwhelmed by what you just said, because it's like, okay, I need this and I need that and I need all this. But then I think through practice, once you practice like anticipating barriers or thinking about how can I make it more accessible, it kind of becomes a little easier to think about it in lots of other areas of school. So like the more you do it, the better you get at anticipating barriers. And then you kind of always have it in your back pocket the more you practice it.
Yeah, and I think what you said too as well about really knowing the objectives, and I think you've referred to them before as the firm goals, yeah? So knowing exactly what you want your meal to be. Hannah and I were talking about it earlier, is like you could look at it like a taco. So that's your end product, that's your objective, that's your goal. But how are you going to deconstruct it so people can come in and they might choose to make their taco with like lettuce, meat, and some tomatoes. Other people may be vegetarian and go beans and choose like their little bits and pieces. But at the end of the lesson, you really still want everyone to have created a taco, because that's your firm goal for the lesson.
Yeah, I often talk about just firm goals and flexible means. And there's something really interesting in the research called the paradox of choice, which means that too many choices actually will create barriers for students. And so I always like to think of, when I'm working with new teachers, I say, like, I want you to take a minute and I want you to think about an academic game of would you rather, right? So the first is, what actually is your goal? What is the non-negotiable? And a lot of the times when you're looking at your goals, it will say something like students will discuss. Okay, students are going to have a discussion. But if I just say, all right, everybody, turn and talk to each other, what are the potential barriers, right? Some students may not have anything to contribute yet. They're just not fast thinkers. And some students may not have the linguistic skills to be able to express truly what they know. And so one of the things that I always say is like, okay, if the goal is discussion, and you can think of these barriers, if I can predict that there might be some students who aren't able to start right away, I might say, today we're going to have a discussion about how the water moves through the atmosphere. Yesterday, you got to build your background knowledge. Some of you might need a couple of minutes to go back and look at how you made your thinking visible yesterday. You might want to look at some sentence stems. And so would you rather start your discussion right now, or would you benefit more from having about 5 minutes to prepare first? So would you rather start now, or would you rather have a couple minutes to prepare? And that's a routine that I can use all the time. Once they make that decision, discussions can take a lot of different formats. So I might say, would you rather have a discussion that you're all kind of sitting together and talking in person, like a World's Cafe? Or would you rather have an online discussion in an online discussion board, like in a shared document? Or maybe you have a whiteboard in your classroom and you can write some things. But what we know is that the ideal number of choices is 2 to 4. And I always make one of those choices, do you have another idea? So I'll say something like, okay, everyone, today the non-negotiable is you're going to write your opinion about something. It has to be written. Would you rather write it by hand in a notebook, or would you rather write it with technology? And that could mean typing with your fingers or typing with your voice. Which of those do you feel like will work better for you today, and why? And then you're going to give that a try. If there's another way to produce writing that I might not know about, because students are so tech savvy, then I'm open to that conversation. But what I always say to people is think about your verbs. If you think about the verbs that you're using all the time, right? Students will understand. That doesn't say read, right? If you have a goal that students will understand, they could build their understanding through text. They could build their understanding through media of some kind. They could build their understanding independently, or they could build their understanding together. That's 4. And that's all I need, right? Every time I have the word explain, understand, if it says communicate, it does not say right? So if it says communicate, I'm like, hello, lovelies. Would you rather communicate in a live presentation? Would you rather communicate with media, recording your voice, making a video? Or would you rather communicate in writing? But if the goal is right, then you think about the verb. It does not say with a talon grip on a pen on white lined college ruled paper. The goal
Perfect handwriting.
Right. The goals do not say that, right? And so every time you look at a verb, just say, what are a couple of ways that you could do this? And the more that those become patterns, the less prep you have to do, because you can just take a lesson and say, okay, this is a text. And so would you rather read this text and annotate it on your own, or would you rather work with a partner and that partner could help you read it out loud? Or, would you rather use technology to access it digitally and then you can enlarge it, you can look up the words? Like, what is your strategy? And then I can make it both accessible and more engaging for the student.
Yeah,
I love that. Kind of thinking about the end and then working backwards about all the, like, this is the destination. How many different ways can we get there, kind of thing?
See, I wonder, when I listen to this, I can already hear teachers, oh, it's too much work. Like, I have to think of so many things. I just don't have time to think about it. But now when I listen to what you said, I'm like, oh, it seems like you start small. It's not like producing really new resources. It's more like the way you frame the assignment or ask the question. So it's not producing so much more work. Is that correct? Is that what?
That is 100% correct. So I was recently working with a group of teachers who were very frustrated because their school was telling them that they wanted them to universally design instruction. And the school also purchased a curriculum that they wanted everyone to use. And the teachers did not feel that this curriculum allowed them to truly universally design instruction. And so I'm like, let me just look at a lesson. And this happened to be a science curriculum. And every lesson started with students watching a simulation or a video of some kind. And then there was a scientific text. And then they had to produce something like either writing or a model or some graphing some data. And then there was, at the end, they had to answer an essential question. And every single lesson loosely followed that. And so they're like, oh my gosh, we have to play this simulation for kids and they're just going to sit there and watch it. And then we have to hand out this workbook and they read the text and then they have to fill out this worksheet and then they have to just discuss the essential question. I'm like, it doesn't say that. You're assuming that that's what it wants you to do. I said, but would you rather each component of this? So the simulation could be, okay, would you all rather come over here, get comfortable in a shared space? I will play it up there. Would you rather watch it on the big screen or would you rather access it on your own device, which allows you to turn on captions, to translate the captions, to pause it when you need to pause it, to speed it up if you can process more quickly. And what I'm going to ask you to do, just so I can be helpful during that time, is to make your thinking visible in some way. And that one that I actually helped them design, it was, what does sound travel through? So it was like, how does sound travel? So as you're watching the simulation, some students might write down words, like, this is what I'm thinking, like, oh, I noticed this. Some students might want to draw. Some people might want an iPad and do digital drawings, whiteboards. But ultimately, I want to be able to walk around and know what you're thinking. And that way I can use this as an informal assessment. And so you can either watch it here together, or you can watch it on your own, or you can share an earbud and whisper and help each other make sense of it. When you're done with that, come and check in with me. Just show me how your thinking is visible, because some of you will finish more quickly. Some of you might need a little more time. That's beautiful. And then you're going to move on to the scientific text. This curriculum is online. So there are workbooks that you could access the text, but the text is also digital, which allows you to listen to it, right? And I always say a read aloud can be no tech or very high tech. The no tech is just finding a peer who has strong oral fluency and they read it. The high tech is that you go online and you listen to it, or you feed that text to like artificial intelligence and you have Snoop Dogg read it to you, whatever you want to do. Then it moves to answering the essential question. And I'm like, there's really only 4 ways to answer a question. One is somehow verbally, and that could be recording your voice. It could be making a presentation. The other is writing of some kind, voice typing or handwriting. Another is something that is artistic, right? A painting, the video demonstration. And the other is just using multimedia, infographic, slide decks. And so, like I said, if you had those routines every single day, like you help students to say, we're going to do simulations, but these are always the would you rathers for the simulation. And I'm open to more creativity. So some students might say, I want to watch it on my own device, but is it okay if I sit in that beanbag chair over there? Of course it is. Thank you for bringing that up, because maybe sitting in that chair is a little bit of a barrier. Or is it okay if I feed it into this artificial thing because I heard that Snoop Dogg can read it to you? Can I try it? Oh my gosh, if you promise to give me an earbud, because I want to hear it too. And it becomes, I am using this program with integrity, but kids are making choices about how they're learning. And I'm moving as a facilitator. I can pull small groups. I can check for understanding. And I'm like, those are the techniques. That's it. And you replicate them every day, every day, every day. And they were like, oh, so it's not about going out and finding something different. It's thinking about like the inherent flexibility of what we already have. And if we can co-create some of those options with kids and saying, listen, my loves, like this is the text that we do have to access, because nobody wrote like this writer, right? This is like a core, profound text. And I want you to have access to this writer's craft. What are the different ways that we could access this? What are your ideas for activating your background knowledge? How do you want to share what you know? And we don't have to do this ourselves. Like we can do this alongside our children that we serve.
And I guess too, with the same context, is answering those essential questions, like how students express themselves. You could look at engagement. Could they role play? Could they, make a video? Could they, I don't know, like you said, artistic or drawing a presentation? Like there's so many different ways that it could be, rather than just getting the worksheet and writing, answers to questions.
I love the idea of would you rather. I feel like I've got 4 doors and they look different. And then it's like they open and it's like, would you rather this? And so like you could make it quite exciting and jazzy, just because that would be my vibe that I would want. Or you could just verbally say it.
And it's almost, a would you rather. It's giving that choice in there where students feel empowered and they have control over their learning. Yeah.
I wonder, why do you think some teachers, they may listen to this and they still don't feel comfortable doing it? What do you think is the barrier for them? Like, why wouldn't they want to try it? Or why do you think teachers maybe sometimes have a hard time letting go? Because there's some, like, right, all of a sudden you give students choices. And I wonder, what is the barrier for teachers that they have to overcome actually to get there and ask the would you rather question, for example?
I think that sometimes it's the first time you do it, it may be a little bit messy. And I think that sometimes it's just scary because like we get comfortable with the things that they're doing. And most of the time, like they're good enough, right? They're working okay for a lot of kids. And it feels really scary to step into the unknown of something that you're not sure how it's going to go. And the truth is it may be messy and the first couple times may be hard, and that is totally okay. We have to embrace this culture of error in education that realizes that success in anything requires a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of like figuring out exactly what works. And so I'm a long distance runner. I do ultra marathons, so 100K races, and the first time that I ran out and, I went out and ran, I think I was in 7th grade and they asked us to run like a 1 mile. I did not like running at all. I wasn't in shape for running. I didn't know how to breathe correctly. I tried to go out and sprint and I was like, oh my gosh, why would anyone ever run? And, the more that I've run, the more I've kind of figured out like what works for me in terms of the sneakers that I wear, in terms of my refueling strategy of how often I'm going to need to eat on a really long run, in terms of using kinetic tape and icing afterwards and stretching, right? And over time, you kind of figure out like, this is for me. And there's a lot of times that I'll say, I'm going to try this new gel. And then I will feel awful. And I say, well, that gel did not work for me. And so what I say to teachers is when you're saying to students, like, try it this way or try it this way, you're ultimately giving them permission to realize that one way works better than another. Mm-hmm. It's this, I call it a no thank you bite. My grandmother, who lived through the Great Depression, was adamant that we try everything. And she'd say, I don't care if you like it, you're going to take a no thank you bite. And so sometimes I would say to students, like, you might not know exactly which of these pathways is going to be the best for you. That's why we're going to try all of them. And what I want teachers to know is you're not going to know which of these strategies are going to work best for your students. You're not going to know if you need more practice, more scaffolding until you try it. And you might try it and say, ooh, it's a no thank you on that. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to move forward. It just means that you figured out the exact context that is not ideal for your learners. And I think there's something really beautiful about saying to learners, we tried to be a little bit flexible today. I'm feeling very overwhelmed and I feel like the class was a little out of control. Let's talk about what are a couple of things we could do so I can still provide choices tomorrow and we can make this work better for everyone. And this idea of like really welcoming student voices into the mix and co-creating something together, that's what true community is all about.
I think I love you because I've watched a few videos of yours, full disclosure, and talking about the no thank you and the Goldilocks thing. And like the way that we work is we think of it as like we're giving you all these tools, and some people love the wrench and they're going to use the wrench all the time. But a lot of other people are like, no, the hammer is the tool for me. And just being like, here are all the tools and how to use them, but then which ones work best for you, or whatever the goal is, which one is best for that goal. So I think the no thank you bite is a very cool way of doing it.
Salman just had a question. He was saying that he feels like many educators are afraid to let go due to fear of stepping out of their own comfort zones. And also that a lot of teachers where he is in South Africa still kind of find the comfort of teaching how they were taught many years ago. So yeah, there's an interesting perspective there.
What I would say is that is not unique to South Africa. I travel all over the world. And I think that a lot of people became teachers because they loved the education they got. They thought that like, wow, this is such a powerful relationship between teacher and learner. I want to be a part of this. And what I found is that most people became a teacher because teachers changed their lives. Of course, some became a teacher in spite of their teachers, meaning that no one ever gave me an education that works for me. But generally, we try to replicate that what works for me, and we want to play it out with our kids. And what I generally will say to teachers is that our job is not to teach. It's to increase student outcomes. Our job is to ensure that students are learning. And I think that moving away from, I have to cover this, this is how I do it. If you can pull that off with an inclusive classroom and all of your students are making progress, then I will step back and I will allow you to do your thing. The truth is less than half of students in the world who are actually going through a formalized education system are meeting or exceeding grade level standards. What we are doing in education doesn't work for most kids. And what we know is that if our job is to ensure that all students are learning at high levels, the evidence is pretty clear that not all students are learning at high levels. And I look at that as an incredible opportunity to do something different, because the system is very good at getting the results that it gets. Teachers are very good at getting the results that they're getting. And if the results that they're getting are showing that there are some students who are not able to make significant growth, who are not able to feel like they're a part of a community or they belong, we just say something about this isn't working. And now I'm going to lean into being a learner to try to figure out what is working. How do I know what isn't working? And John Dewey, who's this great educational psychologist, philosopher from the early 1900s, he said, to say that you are a teacher when students are not learning is like saying you sold something that nobody bought. And I love that quote, because like, you did not teach it if students did not learn it. And so, you know, I always just say, give yourself permission. You know what you're doing isn't working for all kids, and you're putting in way too much effort to experience those outcomes, because most of the time teachers are working really hard replicating practices that just aren't meeting the needs of our kids, because our kids are becoming more diverse, technology is becoming more advanced. And so I look at it as, I am giving you permission to try something else, knowing that of course we're going to make mistakes. And when we figure out that something works, let's keep doing it. And when we figure out that something doesn't work, let's also share that with each other. Like, I have a very good mistake. Don't do this because I learned the hard way. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's so great. So I always say, start really, really, really small. Think of one verb and start going to students saying, you know what, I've been thinking about it. Whenever I provide you with some sort of explicit instruction, which we know that having a model can be very valuable. If I'm teaching and I'm providing visuals and I'm pausing and having active engagement. And so let's say I am a teacher who talks a lot and has students take notes. The teacher probably decides how the students are going to take notes. It's probably something like Cornell notes, where they number their notebooks using every day. And the question is like, why are we doing that? And it's like, well, we don't want students to forget. And it's like, but okay, so that means that all students remember everything because of the note taking, right? And they all excel on your assessments. Well, no. Okay, well, then it's not working. So what are all the different ways that students can make their thinking visible without having to take Cornell notes? Because I am going to guess that the 5 of us on this call and the hopefully billions of people who listen to this, very few people will go to a conference and number all the pages of their notebook, and we'll fold the paper in half and we'll take legitimate Cornell notes. Some people will. This is what my notes look like. It is the hottest mess that you've ever seen, but it does allow me to be successful. I have found my way to support my working memory. And I would just say, like, start with something that small, blow up note taking. And I had a colleague who was a little gruff, as in very gruff. And he was a Navy veteran. And you know this, oh, kids are going to listen to me. And I was in the district, and his idea is that the only way students are going to learn vocabulary is if they write definitions over and over every day in a notebook, in a pencil. And I'm like, what about the athlete who broke his hand? He can't write. Oh, well, he's allowed to type. Why isn't everybody allowed to type? Well, because they're just going to copy the definitions and they won't know them. And I was like, okay, so the goal of this is that you want them to own the vocabulary. Yes. Why don't you give them options? And he's like, so this was his plan. literally said to his class, okay, listen, that's my boss. She thinks that you all are capable of learning the vocabulary if we don't do IDs. So you know what? My way is IDs. You come up with another way. But if anyone gets a lower grade on the next vocab test, we're going back to my way. And I'm like, in some weird way, this is the greatest motivational speech of all time. Even though I'm like, no, this is not the way that we're going to sell it. So the kids literally started like creating these study groups where there's a game called like Heads Up, where you go like this and everybody tries to make you guess the definition. The kids are at lunch being like, capitalism, communism. They are so into it. So anyway, the kids like nail they came up with the strategy. They were helping each other. It became like true like collaborative sense making, and they did really well. And then he called me. He's like, just so you know, I'm the UDL god. I'm like, no, you're not. But that was what allowed him to start being more flexible, to say, if you can prove to me that your way isn't worse than my way, I'm on board. And so when people are like really, really stuck, I'm always like, let me tell you the story of Keith, my dear friend. And he knows I tell this story. He's retired. But after that, he started becoming truly like the leader of UDL. But he actually never did any of the work, which was brilliant.
Genius.
I love what you said was start with something small, blow up note taking.
And this idea of like try out one little thing, like I think what you said, Katie, when you run and you tried that gel and it didn't make you feel good, like this idea of like try something. If it doesn't work, then don't give up. Just try something new until you find something that actually works for you and your student, and then little by little you add more. I think that's good to know too, because sometimes I feel like it's overwhelming.
I think that's such a good model for students as well. It's like, I'm being a risk taker. I'm trying something I'm a little uncomfortable with. And if I can do it, you guys can do it as well. So I feel like you're kind of also really modeling great behavior and inquiry for kids as well.
And sometimes too, I'm sorry. One of the things I always say too is just like, maybe give it a week. So like when I was teaching kids note taking, we would spend a week on Cornell Notes so they understood how to do it, what to do. We spent a week on sketch notes, which is a lot of like writing, we'd spend a week on digital notes. And then it was like, which of those three actually work best for you and why? So like a really deep reflection, lots of conversations. And then now that you know the model that works best for you, how can you make it your own? So I loved the Cornell Notes, but I wish I had been able to type them. Can you put sketch notes into Cornell Notes? What about, right? And so they started, and so I would say after 6 weeks, and I'd say like, so this right now on my feet, I'm going to show you this, because this, I don't know if anyone's heard of like a shot key mat, but it's like a bunch of like little spikes, and a lot of athletes will use them for recovery. And I mean, the first time you do it, it hurts. Like it actually hurts. Like, why would anyone do this? And like everyone says, just give it a week. Give it a week, do it. And the first time I did it, I'm like, people have lost their minds. There's no way that this is ever going to feel good. And my friends are like, just give it a week, just give it a week. And I do it every day now. I can lay on it for 40 minutes. And it is something where like you say to students or you say to teachers, I am giving you all like permission to choose a strategy. And in the next week, do it every day. It will get easier. It will get better. And at the end of the week, you might say, you know what, it's just not for us. And that's okay. But we need to lean into innovation and education, which means that we have to be a researcher in our own domain.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, go Katie.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I like how you include what works for you and why, because like the metacognition that comes with that why is so important. Like students need to be able to voice what works for them, why, so they can begin analyzing and choosing the right methods for them. Yeah,
I think we could probably talk
yes.
for the rest of the day. But we're just gonna, if everyone's okay, we're just gonna stop it there. And thank you so much, Katie. We're trying to keep these a little bit short so that people can sneak in time to watch them or listen to them. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It was really awesome, and you've given us loads of little tidbits to take away and spread all the UDL joy. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Thanks so much, Katie. It was great meeting you.